podcast that houses numerous series to cover mental health, empowerment, podcast framework, and various intimate theories to get to know the hosts, along with occasional movies reviews and dives in pop culture with our event podcast episode. The Uncommonplace digs into bringing guests on that stories don't fit the mold and are very different. WV stands for the great state of West Virginia, and every quarter we cover something in West Virginia. Stacey and myself, JR, are your hosts, so please come along for this venture to our uncommon place.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, however you are consuming this episode, if it's via video or if you're listening to it audio. I hope that we reach you with this message today. Now, something that happens in life as we're navigating through life, we have certain responsibilities for ourselves. We have to have a certain type of upkeeping and how we keep ourselves up. And sometimes we have things in life that trigger us and put us in moods and modes that hamper our day. Um, in the buildup of all the stuff from day one to day 364, um, can lead to a certain type of burnout. And in between that time of going through 365 days in a year, going over 2 or 3 years, you build something about yourself, which is a legacy. And in building a legacy, you want it to have a certain connotation to it. Most people want it to be positive. Some people like a negative connotation to that. So, in doing all that, regardless of what goes on, you have to maintain one great thing between yourself, people, and everything, and that's a healthy relationship. And in doing all this stuff, like I said, it takes a lot out of you, and it's a certain responsibility you have to give to yourself and you have to give to society. And when you're giving this to society, it has to, have certain maintenances to it. And some maintenances that you have to do have to deal with your mental health. Mental health is always a key thing that we talk about on this show, and one thing that we use so much, because the preservation of your mind is sometimes the hardest thing for people to do, because circumstances uh, that even go as far as generational issues, things that started with a grandmother that carry on to you, can hurt you. So today, I have an amazing guest with me, Dr. Shala Patel. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for inviting me, JR, to your show.
Okay. Now, the one little thing that we do that's nostalgic on the show is we always ask, who were you? So if you don't mind, Dr. Patel, could you take the floor and tell us who you are and how you became who you are today?
I was raised in an Indian conservative family. My father was very adventurous and came over from India when the British were still ruling India. And so we were British citizens. And so we were able to travel all the way from India to any of the British colonies. My father chose to go to Kenya, where some of his older brothers had settled. And I was born in Kenya, in East Africa. And I finished my early education in Kenya. And then my father was with the Ministry of Finance as an accountant in Zambia. So I spent 5 years of my life and my high school in Zambia. At the age of 16, decided after finishing high school that the university education that we could get in Zambia is not recognized all over the world. And so most Indians go to some of the British, either they go back to England for further education or they go back to India. And since we were British citizens, we chose to go back to England. And I finished my medical school in St Andrews, Scotland, and I did my housemanship there. I was registered as a physician in England, and then my parents had moved to America because, of course, America was the land of opportunity, and my father always wanted to come over to America. And he was one of the owners of the mom and pop hotels here in America. And then he got into real estate. And I moved over here with my husband, who was a neurologist. And we both settled in Georgia, where we did our residency. and I did 5 years of adult and child training. And then I practiced psychiatry for about 25 years. And at the tender age of 51, I decided that I wanted to retire because mental health, like you said, is very draining. You're dealing with a lot of negative emotions all the time. You're dealing with trying to get people to a better place. It's not like general medicine where you have instant gratification. And so I ended up retiring at 51. And during COVID, and at the same time, my parents were getting frail. And so I was traveling more from Georgia to Florida to take care of them. And so when the COVID hit, I was sitting at home, and a lot of people around here in Cape Canaveral are real brainiacs. And they said, with all my training and experience, maybe I should write some books. And so I decided to write books in mental health. And we were talking about self responsibility earlier. And what was happening in 2018 was the Me Too movement. And I really got tired of the women jumping on the bandwagon saying Me Too rather than looking at things from all perspectives. And I started writing books, starting with Me Too movement, and then went on to a lot of the other societal problems that we were having. And that's where the three books originated from, was taking self-responsibility for the Me Too movement and the hope for women, the relationships, like you said, all the mental health issues that can be caused due to the relationship issues, a lot of the mental health issues that can be caused by the societal problems, and then, of course, the US fractured where we are right now with a lot of the anger and the frustration that has erupted in this country, which to me is so sad because when I moved to this continent 40 plus years ago, it was a totally different place than where we are now.
And I can agree with you. Even though I'm only 40, I can tell you, in my lifetime, I seen a difference in the mid 90s. In 1996 or 1997, when this digital age that we're in now, the internet rose to a certain prominence in the late 90s.
Right.
I always blame it on America Online.
Mhm.
It seems like to me, and this is my first question to you, as being someone that was a clinician in mental health, it seemed like when we were growing up as kids, and you might be able to agree with this, we all saw TV, we all saw photographs because people took pictures. But in this current day and age, people photograph and have a video of their life a constant 24/7. People have a personal, television now in their cell phone. And I've noticed that the more that the screen is in front of people and there's not an actual reality, everything's an augmented reality. It has caused this tear between a simple thing. People talk about community in mental health, but they don't talk about the interlocking things that matter. When me and you were growing up, when you became part of a community or something like that, there was acceptance. And once you were accepted somewhere, that gave you a feeling and a want to connect. And now people have taken away the word acceptance and decided that uh, all you have to do is make a connection with no acceptance. So there's no true responsibility. It's more like camaraderie now in life. So my question to you is this: do you feel that we have lost the touch of having acceptance inside of human connection?
Not only have you lost the human connection, you're exactly right that people think they're more connected because they have so many likes and so many people following them. And, they think that they're very popular because they have so many people. And in fact, it's funny because they talk about, if you have 10,000 followers on your social media, then you should be very popular and you should be, you ought to have things to say that are important. But that's not true because majority of these people are just acquaintances. How many of these people really care about you? How many of those people are your true friends? Who can you turn to when you need somebody? And you're exactly right. There were two major problems that Vivek Murthy, when he was the Surgeon General, said: loneliness and social media. Those were the two major problems that have occurred in your and my lifetime in the last 20 years since the rise of the internet and the social media. My mother is 91 years old, and even in her wisdom, she talks about how the internet has opened up a lot of avenues for everybody, but has it done more harm than good? And I think when it comes to mental health, when it comes to the connectedness of people, it definitely has, because people have become self centered. They want to put the best persona out there. They're lying to themselves. They're not there's so much jealousy going on, where they think everybody else is having so much fun because people are putting out all these pictures and their best views, but nobody's talking about what's really going on with them. Nobody talks about the real feeling of loss and not being connected, not being able to really talk to each other. Nobody's picking up the phone. It's easy to send a text and an emoji rather than picking up the phone and talking like we used to in the old times. You don't see kids going out in the community and playing because the parents want to hover over them, and then there's so much, just monitoring every reaction, every moment of where they are. And the kids are growing up very anxious because when they don't have that connectedness from their parents, they get all anxious, wondering, what's going on? Or if somebody doesn't respond right away to your text, that anxiety of, well, did I do something wrong? Did I not say the right thing? Should I have put a better picture? It just creates so much mental anguish. And that's what we're facing right now with the mental health and the social media.
Okay, and I definitely agree with that. Now, one thing, like you said about your mother, and me and you could do this in a good timeline. My mom is in her 60s. She's 66. Me being 40, my sister's 43 or 42. So you and I, my mom, your mom, my mom, her mom, all saw a certain aesthetic change in mental health too. With the opening of the internet has made it the one good thing the internet has done has made it a place where we talk about mental health more than we did back in the 80s, back in the 90s. I will say that with the Me Too movement, not so much it, but just it being one of the pillars that we can talk about and you can see in front of you, and you could make a scientific method to go around it. You know, we both know that. The one thing that it has done is told people, let's express our mental health. But here's the problem that I found with it, and you may have a problem with it, and I can actually tell that you have a problem with this. I can manifest my problem. I can apply a solution. But after I apply a solution, there's an after effect that I don't deal with, the residuals of taking in all this stuff and trying to re enter society. No one builds a path to help people once they get back into society. Once the actual, because helping your mental health is something that's continued. We both agree on that, I know. But there's a certain point that there's a drop off with the person that's having this ailment or having this illness. They stop somewhere. Something happens and they stop. And we're not talking like a relapse, like an addiction, but the pillars of what make your mind work and all of our hierarchy that we know about and things like that that we grew up with. People forget these very simple fundamentals because they think I shouted on the internet and it should be better by a clinician like yourself or someone fixing it with a quick fix, not knowing that it's not. What is your thought about this generation, the difference from your generation, my generation, your mom's, my mom's generations, like their thought pattern on how to help mental illness?
Well, one of the things that when I was growing up, like you said, we used to be outside playing, and then the moms would call us in. I learned a lot of my how to be a woman, basically cooking, sewing, cleaning up, taking care of the family from my mom. I learned from my dad to be very studious, getting my homework done, making sure that if I was working, how to put my best foot forward. What happens right now is that the kids are always either on their phone, they are on their laptops, they come in, they have one word answers to their parents, and then they are off to their rooms, wanting to check on what's going on the social media, what their friends are doing. So it's a complete disconnect from that family to start with. Then nobody actually spends time talking to parents or grandparents. One of the things that I enjoy most, even at this age, is reconnecting with some of my friends. And of course, I'm getting to that age where we're losing a lot of our friends. And so it's very important to make that connection again, to make sure that we say all the right things. We let them know how much they have made an impact in our lives. And I don't think that the kids are learning that. The other thing that there's such a disconnect with the parents themselves being so busy with their phones and their laptops and their streaming shows that they're not paying attention to what their kids are doing and what their kids are watching and what their kids are actually doing in those chat rooms. And so things have changed so dramatically that one, you're not learning things the right way. You're not talking to the right people. You think that your peers have the right answers when they're all struggling with the same issues. They're not talking to the wisdom that your grandparents had. And let's face it, we all lost so many grandparents during COVID. And there was such a big gap that the children had no longer that connection with the grandparents if they had one at that time. And then, like I said, a lot of the younger people turned to more alcohol and more drug use during the COVID. There was more isolation. There was more isolation for the kids because they couldn't go to school. So it just really increased so much of the mental health issues. And you're right. People think that just because they put a shout out that they want to, that things should get better. One of the studies recently was about kids. They were taught, they monitored how many hours they had on the social media, and they acknowledged that the more time they spent on the social media, their anxiety and the depression scales were higher. When they took away the social media, all the symptoms decreased. But guess what? As soon as the study was over, they all went back to the number of hours they were spending on the social media, even though they felt better. So you're right. One of the things is that pathway to taking away that social media is not being corrected.
And I agree with that. And like you said something that I like to go back and touch back on this disconnect. I even noticed it. Matter of fact, yesterday I was at a sporting event for a nephew of mine, and this was his first time ever playing football. And I noticed, like, just looking in the crowd, I remember, in a field like that, photography and video is always something that happens. But I noticed parents were more worried about live stream, excuse me, live streaming a football game across Facebook and even over LinkedIn. I was like, you're going to tell me that a business professional wants to watch an eighth grade football game. And I noticed that people were more worried about being broadcasters than actual like cheering or anything like that when the kids, even though it was just a scrimmage. And then another thing that I noticed, I was in Las Vegas for a video game tournament this year, big one. I went to the Grand Canyon on one of my days off. And at the Grand Canyon, instead of people really immersing themselves in the culture and everything that you get there, yeah, people weren't worried about that. Like, I understand, we were in a guided tour. So in that guided tour, I was fine with that. But when we were given time apart, people were more worried about how they were looking in a picture than actually enjoying the environment. So my question to you, with this disconnect, what is a teachable way that we can garner healthy relationships between our adults and children when they're actually out together in public? Because I know you notice this too. You can go to lunch in a little bit or dinner.
Everybody would be.
And I mean I've been guilty of it once or twice, because what I do now is my phone has no notifications on. The only thing that happens is that my telephone does. If you call me, it rings. That's what I get, because that's what a phone was made for.
Right.
And emails and stuff like that, I do take my 15-minute breaks outside of my normal job to check those and
Right.
different things with the podcast. But I made it a point that notifications will not be a part of my life. I will see everything on my terms. But my thing to you is like, how do we make a step? How do we, as a parent, as a grandparent, how do we help our children understand that every moment in life doesn't have to be dictated by a device, by the idea that you're going to miss out on a moment? Because children nowadays don't know what moments are. They do is reference back to a photo or a video. So how do we help them there?
That is so accurate, JR. I just, really worry about what these kids are doing. And my biggest thing with parenting, when I do my parenting podcast, is role modeling. Okay, how do you foster confident children? And role modeling has always, I always say, kids learn by watching, not by what you tell them. And so if the parents are not willing to model putting down their phones, if they're not willing to say, hey, when we have dinner, everybody put away your phones. We are going to sit down and talk. Like you said, when you go to restaurants, what do you see? You see couples, both of them in their phones, or you see the whole family, or you see the kids are always on the phone. Or when they're driving, the kids have their own music going, they've got their headphones on, so nobody's actually talking to each other. So one of the things is that the parents have to make rules, have to, and apply it to themselves as well. They have to put their phones away. It's so funny that you talk about children and parents, because I and my partner are always getting into that, because when we're watching TV shows, he's always got his face in his phone and watching and listen and watching, either reading news or whatever. And it frustrates me to no end. Like, we're both watching a show. Why don't we concentrate on that? Why don't we talk about that? Why don't we laugh together instead of half your attention is on the show? It's certainly not with me, and half of it is on your phone. And I think that's the whole thing about role modeling and personal responsibility we started this talk with, is that the parents and the grandparents have to model for the children what's a healthy way of communicating, what's a healthy way of interacting, what's a healthy way of connecting. And if they forget the basic premise of humans connecting, we are going to be a lost generation. And we are losing that generation, sadly.
And that is so true. Now, Dr. Patel, you have a trilogy out here of books: Personal Narrative, Psychiatric Insight, and Cultural Critique of Contemporary America. And for layman's terms, let's do this. Let's break it down to make it a little simpler for the other people. You see America, and you're doing an amazing thing, looking at it from the outside and the inside.
Right.
Almost like taking a glass, filling it up with everything that's in the world,
Right.
taking some of it inside because you have to embrace it, and then looking from the outside. And that's a good perspective to have in life. And I want to tell you, thank you for that. I want to tell your mother and father, thank you for that, because not a lot of people can do those perspectives. And that's a great thing.
Right.
So, whenever you talk to your mom, you hold her, and the insight of your father, make sure that always stays in the world, please. Thank you.
Right.
Now, the first book, US Unhinged, or Us Unhinged, it explores the Me Too movement and how societal shifts in relationships have been affected by this. So here goes my story with the Me Too movement. The first person that we talk about that everybody brings up is a certain director. And this director, he caused a lot of issues, Mr. Weinstein.
Weinstein.
And Mr. Weinstein will always be synonymous with Me Too.
Right.
I almost believe if me and you were going to go film a documentary and go visit a prison, I would have to give him a lot of time to explain himself. And then I would have to go to every female actress that had an issue with him.
Right.
So, me as a male, I understand as I've gotten older that in our society at a young age, when trauma happens to you, no matter the subjectiveness of what happens to you, it can close you off. And in a reality, when someone gets brave, and I hate to say it this way, when someone gets brave or someone gets to a point where fortitude steps in and they're like, hey, I need to tell my story, I need to embrace it. That is fine. And when someone else's voice comes out, then everybody else's voice comes out. And one other story in particular, there's another man, and I know that I'm talking about quite a few men about this because the other side of the story, I don't know if we hear that very much about what happens to the men in this situation, but the next person I can say is Bill Cosby. Now, Bill Cosby, over the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and into the 2000s, 5 decades, this man went around and did whatever he did. He was proven guilty and went about his business, and he was charged. The idea of women from 1960 plus till now deciding to come out and tell their story, it kind of to me seemed a little tarnished, and I think this is where your book kind of gets in, because I can understand a hard grief, and I can understand a because we can't put a time frame on when you want to tell your story or when you decide to let it out. But if collectively a society has known for over 50 years or 40 years, we'll say, that a man has gone out in the community, drugged women, performed whatever lewd acts he's done, and there's cardinal knowledge from the people that were involved and people that knew. I mean, that it was cardinal knowledge all around.
Right.
And everybody protected this one man.
Right.
It kind of sits wrong with me later because I don't want to judge a victim, but I'm kind of like, that's 50, 40 plus years. You all sat on this. This man, not to judge him, not to even side with him, this man is going to die soon.
Yes.
He don't have much time.
Right.
But you could have got him in his prime. You could
Right.
have got him in the downfall of his career when it went dwindled down. But at the last stretch of this man's life, you bring all this out.
Right.
And then the next part that comes with the Me Too movement, the the measurement of what happened to you. Because there's been instances where there have been accusations made against men and they are not true.
Right.
And that has been a hard society shift for men like me. I'm not going to consider myself anything more than a gentleman, but ever since that movement, I have had to be more conscious of
Right.
who and what I do.
Right.
So, inside your book, you talk about the family and the individual. How, as a man, do I take responsibility for someone else's acts and but at the same time be a person that's understanding of others needing to heal from this when I have to make sure that I'm not part of this predatorial issue?
You have touched on almost all aspects of what I have written in the book. And the reason why I wrote about the Me Too movement was not to glorify or just highlight the trauma that the women go through. And most of the men that have read this book have felt so much comfort that I really addressed this issue from both the male and the female perspective. And I've talked a lot about the responsibility that women have had to take and need to continue to do this on an everyday basis. I've talked about all the actresses that let this continue to get to a certain position, to get a certain role in a movie, and they put themselves into that situation to get abused. And you're right, that why did they keep it a secret? Why did they all just suddenly start talking out? Why do they have a need after 50 years to have that 5 minutes of glory saying, hey, that happened to me too? What is the purpose of coming out now, like you said? And for the males, like you said, you go through generations and your whole lifetime building a reputation. And when you are accused falsely, or let's face it, the expectations of behaviors were different 50 years ago than they are now. People are a lot more cognizant of, hey, certain things do upset women, but are the women taking responsibility? It's like I say in my books, I am a conservative Indian female, and I know that the females don't like to hear this because they always say, "Well, you should be able to do whatever you want to, or it doesn't matter what you do, but the other person has to be in control." No, it takes two people to either make a relationship, to cause the trauma, and I'm talking about the way women dress in this country. Women go around exposing their breasts and then they complain that the men are focused at looking at their breasts. Well, if you don't want men looking at it, then try and dress a little bit more conservatively. I see very, very young girls walking along the beach here with very scanty bikinis. And, then they worry about why men or pedophiles are looking at this. Well, as parents, should you not be talking to your daughters about covering yourself a little bit if you don't want that kind of attention? And that's where I have really stressed self responsibility. I have broken down a lot of the trauma, the sexual molestation, the sexual abuse, and rape, and the difference between all these different things, and where the women need to be responsible, where the men need to be responsible. Um, when I was looking at the statistics of sexual assaults in colleges, one of the things is that parents never talk to their boys about what could happen when you excessively drink, about sexual abuse, what could happen. And 97,000 assaults happen every year in colleges. And the girls need to be understanding too that if they don't want to be in that situation, they don't need to overindulge with alcohol, because when their senses are not altogether there, they're more likely to be taken advantage of. Now, do you blame the boy for taking advantage? Yes, you do have to, because they have to show some self-restraint. But are the girls also not equally responsible for putting themselves into that situation by getting drunk and being in that situation of getting abused? So it does take both of them to take responsibility. And I get really frustrated when everybody's always just siding with the victims. And you're right that so many false accusations happen because the woman does not want to take responsibility that they did put themselves into that situation. They did dress provocatively. They did lead the man on. And when the things got too bad, or they didn't want to go any further, just because they say stop, it should have stopped. And the male should have suddenly, become all responsible. No, I am sorry, but the responsibility is on both and not just the males. I get really frustrated now when you can't even say, the males have issues at workplace where you can't even say, hey, you're dressed beautifully, or I like that dress, or you look beautiful today. People look at it as a come on. And we were just watching a show the other day where a person who was in charge was just putting a hand on the female's shoulder, and she happened to be gay. And the female said she felt uncomfortable because of that. Well, how ridiculous is that? Some people are, and like I am, I'm very huggy, touchy, feely person. And all through my career, everybody used to say, as a psychiatrist, you shouldn't touch your patients. You shouldn't show affection. And I'm sorry, but I cried with my patients. I hugged my patients when they needed it. And majority of the times, if there was a lawsuit, they always say, no, we're not going to sue Dr. Patel. We're going to sue the hospital if something bad happened. Because I had that relationship with them. They knew that what I was doing was for their best interest. And that's the part that we're going to be losing with this Me Too movement, because males are so scared. And also, I mentioned about the corporate ladder, that what corporations are going to want to hire a female with this baggage that they bring along, that if they say something wrong, or they have to have a late meeting, or they have to go to a meeting together, are they going to be accused? And I've addressed a lot of these issues in my book that both males and females need to think about.
And I agree wholeheartedly on that. Now, you get into your second book. Hold on for 1 second.
Hey everybody, this is Stacy. JR had to step out for a moment. We are going to continue on with this interview here, and if you want to go ahead and continue where you guys left off, we'll step back in here real fast.
Okay, I and JR were just talking about my first book, which was the Us Unhinged.
Okay.
And we discussed a lot about relationships between men and women, the self-responsibility for men and women, what they need to take, and then hope for women as well. Because basically, let's face it, for centuries, women have been looked on as second-class citizens. And sadly, even now, with the current administration, so many of the female rights and freedoms are being lost.
Right.
And I'm talking about the freedom of what you need to have control over your body, what you can put in it, when to get pregnant, when not. And even with the vice president talking about females needing to be home and pregnant, I really take kind of this is such a backward step in such a forwardly progressed society.
Right.
And those are the kind of issues that I have addressed in my second book. And like I said, the first one was Us Unhinged, and the second book is called US Unhinged. And US is talking about a lot of the societal problems. We're talking about the gun control, the mass shootings, how we continue, even recently with that shooting in the church with the kids getting killed.
Yeah.
Everybody gets up in arms and talking about, oh, it's the shooter, it's not the guns, and nobody, and especially again with the current administration, going back on all the stringent laws that you can have in this country for gun control. Things like euthanasia, which is, in some countries, people look at people dying with dignity. And in this country, when I was practicing, I saw so many older patients coming in to the hospital, just screaming, totally in pain, pooping and peeing and having to wear diapers, bedridden. Is this dying with dignity? No, we keep them on tons of medications. We keep them chained with medical procedures. And instead of just letting nature take its course and letting them pass with some dignity. So those are the kind of major issues. I talked a lot about raising confident children, role modeling, what the parents need to do. And those are the societal problems that I have really addressed in my second book, which was the US Unhinged. And then my third book, I was very incensed with what happened on January 6th, because we were just talking about how much the country has changed in the 40 plus years since I came to America.
Right.
And there was such a inclusiveness with immigrants and everything that the immigrants have done for this country. I don't agree with the Biden administration that the borders were just left open and so many of the big cities got flooded with immigrants. We got flooded with not people, with the homelessness situation, how it has impacted a lot of the problems. But at the same time, what America stood for, what America, how there was cohesiveness, people worked together. Americans are the most generous of people. When somebody says something has happened in the community, everybody gets together and helps each other out.
Right.
But what is dealing with now is the anger and frustration. Friends cannot talk to friends. They can family at family gatherings. The families cannot talk together if you have opposing political views. And that's not how society needs to be. That's not how families need to be. That's not how people work together, how you can be more productive. And those are the lot of the issues that I've addressed in my third book, the third book, The US Fractured. And so it's a trilogy of looking at things either generationally, uh, what would be good for society, what would be good for relationships, what would be good for families, and then how to deal with the pre-COVID situation and the post-COVID situation and what actually happened during the COVID years. And it's funny that I wrote a lot of things before the vaccines came out of how society will be if we don't put a handle on this and exactly what will happen with the mental health. And I hate to say it, but a lot of things I wrote in my book has come true.
Right. And I've noticed what you said about the family differences. Like I've seen people quit talking to parts of their family because they don't agree with something.
Right,
And it's like everybody is entitled to their own opinion.
right,
You are allowed to believe whatever you believe,
right.
and someone else is allowed to believe whatever they want to believe. I can believe whatever I want to. And it's the fact that they don't want to accept someone else's point of view. They just want to be like, "Hey, I'm right. I'm only right. You're wrong. Let's never speak again." I'm just like, "Okay." So that's
Well,
definitely what I took away from that part.
in my last podcast, they wanted me to talk about how do you deal with this fracture? How do you feel? How do you deal with this anger?
Right.
And one of the things that I said is that you're exactly right. Everybody's so opinionated that they are shut off. They don't want to listen to anything.
Right.
And most people just listen to their own newscasters. Either they're going to be Fox and you know it's so funny because they still call it Fox News, even though
Right.
the Fox News lawyers themselves have said this is not news, this is entertainment. It is
Right.
not accurate. So one of the things that people do is that they focus in on just what they want to listen and who they want to listen to.
Yep.
My challenge to them was check the facts, be armed with the right facts, and then when people express their opinions, you can say, hey, okay, listen to them first of all. Don't interrupt them, because if you start attacking them as soon as they've opened their mouths, they're not going to want to listen to anything you have to say. So if you
Right.
want to be listened to, then you have to learn to listen as well. The sad part is that the attention span of every American has got shorter and shorter with the social media, and nobody reads anymore.
Right.
A
See,
lot of people were asking me about my books. How are my books doing? And I said, I didn't write the books because I wanted to make money. I wrote the books because if people are really interested in getting the right information and wanting to understand how to move forward in a more positive way, then there is information in there. And hopefully over time, there is a historical documentation of what has happened to this country,
yep.
what happened during 2018 and 2024. And one of the things that um, I talk about is just be informed. You will feel better about yourself knowing that you have the facts. And
Right.
then when you express it more calmly, then maybe something will. And even for myself, initially I get upset about something, but then I will take a step back and say, okay, Why did they say that? Why are they reporting it this way? Is there something good in what the administration is doing? Let's focus on some of the good things, not only all the bad things, and shut yourself off.
Right.
And I think that all of us have flaws, and let's face it that we're all going to make mistakes. But if we only focus on those mistakes, there's going to be so much negativity in our lives. And one of the things, and disconnecting yourself from that media, which is 24/7, focusing on the bad things, keeps us all in a very bad place
Right.
mentally. And disconnecting from that, checking your facts, talking more positively and calmly, accepting what others have to say, and then looking at it more realistically rather than just saying, hey, this person doesn't know what they're talking about, and let's just not listen to them.
Right.
So those are a lot of things that I advocate to people, trying to do the right thing. But you have to model it first. If you
Right.
just expect others to change, that's not going to happen.
Right. Okay. So he's got, let's see, the next question here. What inspired you to write your trilogy? And how did the culture and political climate influence your decision?
Basically, that's what we mentioned is that
Yeah.
the Me Too movement in 2018 was really going strong then. And so we've talked earlier in the podcast about how women need to take responsibility and not just jump on the bandwagon. Then it came to having come from an Indian background and Indian culture where women are really treated as second class citizens. And then coming to the land of America where women have had all this freedom. They've got freedom to dress the way they want to, have any jobs they want to, move up in careers they want to. And then seeing all the destruction that was happening with the school shootings and the Me Too, the Black Lives Matter, the civil unrest, the immigration issues, and so a lot of that during the COVID times, I had so much time on my hands that I felt like I needed to make productive time because my passion is traveling, and I could not travel during the COVID time,
Right.
and so I felt like maybe I could write some books and put the information out there. And then, like I said, my biggest impetus writing the U.S. Fracture, which I put out in 6 months, was because of the anger and the frustration of what had happened to the American society and the division it was causing. Uh,
Right.
as far as the cultural things, having been brought up in a very Indian conservative culture, I felt like I could be an outsider looking in what was happening to the American culture and how the women are being dragged backwards with what's happening right now just really incensed me. And I felt like women need to continue to have this voice, but at the same time, be realistic and take responsibility because one of the things that I advocate a lot is leaving behind a legacy in your life. What is your life going to be worth? And what message do you want to leave that's going to be positive. And for me, it's self responsibility and having a purpose in life and finding your passion, especially in the later years, of what kind of message you want to leave behind, not only for your kids or grandkids, but for society in general.
Right. So would you say that this set of books was your passion and what you're looking to leave behind, or is there something else that you're looking to do more?
I I really am so glad that they pushed me into writing these books because, like I said, I'm surrounded by brainiacs in this Cape Canaveral. They're all engineers and astronauts and, space engineers and aeronautical people. And they all felt like, with my background in mental health, that this set of books would go a long way to helping people understand the psyche of what's happening in America during these formative years.
Right.
And so, yes, in a way, it's great to have that and have it in the Library of Congress forever. That if anybody ever wants to look back on America and see what had happened during these years, they've got this trilogy to look at.
Right.
But I was very lucky that I was the only female psychiatrist and the only child psychiatrist in the area where I practiced for about 15 years. So I was very, very busy. I worked 24/7. I took care of the kids, the adults, the women, and I was able to retire at 51. And I don't have kids, so I was able, I didn't have college funds, I didn't have weddings to plan, things like that.
Right.
So I have been financially stable, and I love nature, and I love national parks. And that is where I want to also leave my majority of wealth when I pass, is that I want the future generations to continue to enjoy in things that I have enjoyed so much in my life. And
Yeah.
America is so lucky that it's such a vast land that offers so many opportunities, not only for your mental health, for your nature, for your camaraderie, for your families to enjoy something together. And that would be a great legacy to leave behind as well.
Yes. So speaking of national parks, we went to one of the national parks in Pennsylvania and ended up with a passport book.
You're right.
The passport book, you can go all of the national
I
parks.
get mine stamped every time.
Yeah. So you have one too that you're working on?
Yes.
What place are you most looking forward to in your passport book?
What am I looking forward to
That you
going
haven't, yeah, that you
that I
haven't
haven't been
visited yet.
to? I'm not given that much of a thought. I know that on my bucket list, I still want to see the Northern Lights. So
Yeah.
maybe I will see them, in the Chicago area, in that north, if you're looking at just America. Or of
Mhm.
course, there isn't a national park in Iceland, but obviously going abroad. Like I said, I love to travel. And
Yeah.
so that is one of the things that I really want to explore more. I mean, any state you pick, you can find a wonderful national park to go to.
Right.
And
Yes.
we love hiking waterfalls. And so we go to North Carolina all the time. I love the fall time because I love the fall colors of
Yes.
the leaves. So we try and find where the best fall leaves are during October and travel there.
Have you ever visited West Virginia in October?
Um, no, I have not.
Okay. So here's your challenge, or what I am challenging you to do. Look up the New River Gorge Bridge
Okay,
and check out that area in the fall time.
I will.
Will be beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful in general,
Right.
but that is a great place to visit. And I think that if I'm not mistaken, we can correct that later if I need to. I believe that it is a new national park.
Okay.
Like it is recently established as a national park.
Okay,
So
great. Well, thank
that
you
might
for
be
that.
something fun to do.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. How do you define responsibility in today's context? And how can this lead to both personal and societal healing?
Like we mentioned earlier in the
Mhm.
podcast, personal responsibility is something that I take very seriously because that's the only way you're going to teach the future generations, the kids, the grandkids, what is the right thing to do.
Right?
If you blow your top and shout and scream when somebody, whether it's road rage or you're being incensed about something, then that's the kids learn by watching.
Oh,
So you
yes.
have to focus on self responsibility. We've talked about self responsibility with the Me Too movement. The women do have a responsibility not to put themselves into that situation, to dress appropriately. There's a place to be sexy. There's not, you don't dress sexy all the time. Um, so self responsibility starts with yourself. So what are the messages you're putting out, not only to your children and grandchildren, but also to society in general? How are people going to view you? How are they going to show respect to you? You get respect by showing respect. If you are aggressive and angry with people all the time, then you can expect them to retaliate to you like that. We talked about self responsibility with listening and, not only holding on to your own opinions, being open. And so I think that you have to slowly make changes with yourself, within your family, within your extended family, and then with people that you come in contact with. And hopefully, one person at a time. That's what I
Right.
talk about. with self-responsibility.
Okay. I like that. And I agree with you. I think people forget that behavior is sometimes a learned
Right,
instance,
right,
and children have to learn it from somewhere.
right,
They're just not acting this way because they made it up. And even when you get older, it's learned behavior in your teens, early 20s, for the rest of your life. You constantly see someone act a certain way, and there's no repercussions for that person, so you think it's normal, you think it's okay,
right.
and that's just how you're raised.
Well, we talk a lot about how children learn to use drugs and alcohol
Mhm.
or smoke from their parents or
Yeah.
grandparents. And that's a very big thing with self-responsibility too, that if you don't want your kids to turn into alcoholics, then maybe you need to put your drink down.
Right. Right.
And, uh, you know, learning to also talk to children, because one of the quotes that I use in most of my podcasts is this child saying that when I come home from school and your parents ask, well, how was your day? And you say, good. And then you go into your room, you close the door, and you get on your phone or your laptop or whatever, so there's no more interaction. So either the parent has a choice of looking at the child through the keyhole with just that one answer, or opening the door and going and sitting on the bed, taking away their phone and laptop and saying, let's talk about how your day was. And so
Right.
this is a very important perspective from a child's perspective
Mhm.
of what the parents can do, and role
Right.
modeling of how to learn to communicate and talk. Don't just take the one word. And I know that parents are busy, but we talked earlier about needing to put your own phones down, your own laptops down, your own streaming shows away,
Yeah.
and actually connect at dinner time, talk, have rules in the house, and follow those rules.
Right. Okay. Let's see here. Um, the books frequently touch on child development and non-gender biased parenting. What advice do you offer to today's parents struggling with modern pressures and cultural expectations?
Again, they do have cultural expectations, but raising confident children is the answer to most issues.
Right.
If the child, like, I've never ever wanted to just have brand name clothes. I've always said, okay, whatever feels good, whatever looks good, whatever fits good. And if you feel you're confident in your own self, you're raising a child to, and most parents have a hard time when the children are demanding brand name clothes, or they want the latest technology or whatever, whether they can afford it or not.
Right.
Be honest with the children. Let's talk to them about finances. Parents think, oh, the kids need to get, let's not have 20. That's the only thing I guess I can agree with Trump, that you don't need $20, you just need $1. The thing that I disagree with is that the doll should cost $100 and not $10.
Right. Right.
And so, there is such a thing as overindulgence, not talking to the kids about what the realities are,
Right.
teaching the children from early on about budgeting and how the families are run. I think that that would go so much better if the kids have an understanding than just telling them, no, you can't have this, without
Right.
giving them any reason for why that is happening. And then you're struggling with your own bills, and you don't know how to make ends meet. And then you get into more and more credit card debts. Um, People just tend to create their own problems. Life can be very simple. And
Right.
it's funny that I always say I made a lot of money by giving out a lot of common sense advice.
Yes.
And that's what a lot of what parenting is about, is just being true to yourself, true to your kids, and be honest and open communication.
Right. Okay. And then I've got one more question for you, and then we'll go over anything that you think we might have missed.
Okay.
So, given the intensity of the social crisis you write about, pandemics, unrest, political division, what gives you hope about the future of America and global society?
That is a tough question. What gives me hope? In my heart, I truly believe that Americans are good people.
Hmm.
And I really feel that when they see a lot of injustices happen, that they will side on the side of doing right, of being good to your neighbors, being good to your people at the workplace, doing the right things. And sometimes it's almost generational changes. And I think that the more parents understand the detriment that social media is creating for the children, because let's face it, you don't want to do things for your children that's going to cause them harm,
Right.
even though you automatically do it. I mean, you've got lots of families that are continuing with their alcohol use, their drug use. um, you hear a lot of family violence, so there's always going to be that percentage that's always going to have issues. But for the majority of the people, I think talking more about mental health, talking more about the problems with social media. Sadly, AI is going to create more problems. Let's face it. AI is already creating more problems with relationships. They're talking about AI girlfriends and
Right.
boyfriends, AI sex. People are not having sex to connect as much as they
Right.
used to. So sadly, there are going to be those problems. But I think that with every issue, um, it's going to peak where we're going to have problems. And then people are going to realize that if they don't make changes, they're going to be unhappy. And majority of the people don't want to stay unhappy. They want to find simple joys. They want to find happiness. They want to start doing the right things. And I think that talking more about mental health, programs like these that highlight what you can do and what you should do, and that it's a choice. It's a choice for everyone to say, hey, okay, we will, I want to take the right step, and then only we're going to have a better society. um, and like I say, neighbors talking to neighbors, maybe families talking within the families. Hey, I heard about this, I know about this book. Sadly, nobody reads books anymore, but
Right.
maybe even just looking up articles or whatever. I mean, there's so much good information on the internet if you want to look for it, as to how to deal with some of these issues. And maybe that's where the hope will have to come from.
Right. Now I will say I've just started recently picking books back up again. So I was guilty about getting away. When I was young, I used to read books all the time. Got away with it or got away from it. Got on the whole social media kick there, spent a lot of time on TikTok
Right.
and finally got onto Book Talk, which got me back into wanting to read some more. Um, so my question for you, and I don't know if you guys went over it earlier or not, but if you did, it's okay because we like to put it in here multiple times.
Right.
If anybody has any questions for you, anything like that, is there a place that they can reach out to you, like email, website, social media, anything like that?
They can. I have I have a mail, an email that is
Okay.
specifically for, and it just says Sheila at connect.com.
Okay.
And they can go to my website, which is really easy. It's www.drshilapatel.com.
Okay.
And like I said, they can always email me at sheila@sheilapatel.com.
Okay.
Those are a couple of real simple links where they can even look in at my website. They can look at what my different books offer.
Okay.
I am retired, so as a psychiatrist, I don't practice anymore.
Okay.
And so, but if anybody's interested in any further information or how to connect with me, I also have a couple of my podcasts or links to different videos that I have made talking about issues in general. It's all on my website, so they can certainly look at it. If they want to get any books and more information about the books, all of them are available on Amazon. You just have to put down books by Dr. Shila Patel, but you have to spell Sheila, Shila, and all the 3 books will show up with some information on the books.
Okay. And then we'll try to
that-
put those links in the show notes too.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I've got, I send you my media sheet where, I've got all my social media links as well.
Okay. Yep. We'll put all that down at the bottom in the show
Right.
notes. Is
Okay.
there anything important that you feel you want to go over that we didn't cover in today's episode?
The only thing I talk about with older people, don't give up on life once you get to a certain age or you retire, or
Yeah.
find a passion and purpose, and always take care of not only your physical health but your mental health too. And that goes a long way of having a productive older life and aging gracefully rather than giving into your mental and health problems. But finding passion for sure.
Yes. And I think that is an excellent spot to end this episode. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed this mix up here. Under different circumstances, it would have been nice. I'm gonna hit the button there for his exit thing, and then I'll pause the show and we'll do our finalized things here in just a second.
Please follow WV Uncommonplace on Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter, TikTok, where we have some great content, Facebook, LinkedIn. Hit up the merch store at oncommonplace.square.site. Join the email list from the website, and rate, subscribe, and give feedback from your favorite podcatcher. And lastly, thanks for listening, and tune into the next episode.